stressed. Wanna try? Music is very relaxing.
Sure. Much better.
You ever get the feeling that the writers are going out of their way to assassinate Applejack's character? I mean, she was stupid before, but here she's just being stupid and unrealistically arrogant. I know it's cheating, but I ended up seeing Tricky Fox's video on Honest Apple while working on this review, and with that combined with my feelings on the episode beforehand, yeah, this one really sucks. I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they did this one. It's like they're trying to make Applejack as unappealing as possible. This episode just becomes so one note in such an annoying way, I honestly can't see anyone outside of the most dedicated of Applejack fans liking it. Okay, let's see what happens. Rarity is hosting a fashion contest in Ponyville and has decided to assign Applejack to be a judge on the show. Everyone finds this ironic, including Applejack herself, since she has a more practical outlook on clothing than anyone else. And yet Rarity still decides to make her a judge for this exact reason. So after deciding to become a judge because she briefly helped Apple Bloom with her hat, she proceeds to insert her opinion into the design of the clothing in preparation for the show. And she does this in the worst possible way it can be done. After insulting the other judges and the clothing designers, as well as fashion as a concept, the entire show is called off, leaving Rarity in a fix. Can she get Applejack to learn the error of her ways in time to save the show? Oh boy, are you gonna feel stupider for knowing how that ends up going. So let's get the obvious out of the way first. Applejack is insufferable in this episode. Not only does she go out of her way to show how unqualified she is for this position, but she keeps hammering in how she thinks she is and that she knows better than the people with more hands-on experience. Throughout the whole thing, she acts rude and inconsiderate, even going so far as to wreck the clothing at one point, even when it was shown to be perfectly stitched. Yes, Applejack is stubborn, but she's not an idiot. At least she's supposed to know better than this. And every time she acts up like this, she follows it up with something like, "It's my opinion," and even uses it as a defense when she insults everyone over what she thinks of their passion. She says she was just being honest, but she uses it in such an oblivious context. She was using it as an excuse for her bad behavior, which is not okay by any means. And then she gets triggered over someone not liking apples, claiming that it's an insult to all the hard work she goes through, just so she can be like, is that how I was making those judges feel? Okay, if she needed a taste of her own medicine to realize how idiotic she was acting, then she really is that incredibly stupid. And that's not including the fact that she committed potential kidnapping and doesn't even really take back what she said about her insults. She just says she appreciates the hard work they put into their fashion, and that apparently makes everything better. And wait a minute, didn't this already happen, where Applejack learns a lesson about fashion and how to appreciate it better? Oh yeah, Suited for Success. Are they really going so far as to contradict one of the most well-known episodes in the series? Did they really want to make the episode that bad? In Suited for Success, Applejack was being picky about what kind of fashion she wanted presenting her in Rarity's show. And by the end, she learns to accept a different style. She even learns to better appreciate Rarity's hard work in her clothes, and in several episodes following that incident, she's completely okay with wearing non-practical clothing for special events. Even without that in mind, she's always been shown to be supportive of Rarity's passion and to be supportive of it. But now, Applejack is acting like she didn't learn anything from those endeavors. But wait a minute, Hoity-Toity is in the episode! The guy who made his first and potentially only appearance in Suited for Success. So this episode wants to remind us of Suited for Success while also contradicting the character development Applejack went through in that episode? What a fucking load. Even the setup for the conflict is so stupid that the episode itself comments on this in the opening and throughout the second act. Okay, so Rarity wants Applejack to be a judge for practicality of the clothing, despite that practicality is not something that meshes well with fashion. Pinky and Spike seem to understand this, even Applejack understands this. So Rarity Rarity's decision to implement practicality makes no sense. And the second act shows Rarity acting worried and nervous over Applejack and how she becomes burned out and exhausted over putting up with it. So she must have known that this was a bad idea from the start. For Rarity to think it's a good idea and then realize it was a bad idea so quickly just makes her look pretty dumb. They could have at least eased into it to make it feel better paced. And speaking of which, the pacing is another problem with the episode. At first it seems to be going by evenly, but when they get to the second act, it suddenly becomes so painfully slow and dragged out. So much of it is Applejack being a stubborn idiot, which not only gets repetitive really fast, but boring really fast. It could have been more even if it didn't go out of its way to portray Applejack at such a level of ignorance, but because it does, the setup for the events is far too generic, which makes the conflict even more boring. The way the episode ends doesn't even make any sense. Apparently the contest ends in a three-way tie because Applejack couldn't decide who made better clothes. That is nuts. The entire point of the episode was making Applejack a judge for a contest to see who was better. Not only does this make Rarity's decision to involve Applejack pointless, but it's also a missed opportunity to slightly make up for the episode's faults. This could have been the one time in the entire episode where Applejack's feedback had any weight to it. She could have commented on what made one set better than the others, which would have been acceptable critical feedback, which would lead to them improving their craft. It would have shown that Applejack was doing her job as a judge, and it would have also shown that she was being helpful to them. But instead of doing that, they go for a complete cop-out and a lazy way out. And I completely detest the way this episode tries to teach us about opinions from such a stupid angle. Throughout the episode, Applejack uses it to justify being an idiot and acting inconsiderate towards the other characters. And then it's followed up with this scene where Applejack gets a taste of her own medicine when Rarity shows her someone who doesn't like apples. And this strawberry sunrise proceeds to act just as arrogant as Applejack was. And then Rarity tries to prove her point by telling Applejack that it's just her honest opinion. That's a terrible point to make. Yes, people tend to have contrasting views, but using it as a defense for how stupid or how oblivious someone is acting is not an acceptable excuse and can actually lead to a lot of problems. Throughout this entire endeavor, it's been used to justify horrible characterization and is a potential source of a lot of the episode's conflict. Is that supposed to be a meta lesson for this episode? Don't respect people with different opinions because they use it as an excuse to be horrible? If so, that is potentially the worst and most harmful lesson I've ever seen from this series. Assassinating Applejack's character is bad enough, but did they really have to be this confusing as to what it's trying to teach people? Don't take back any insults you make as long as you say that you understand where the opposing person is coming from? This is Teen Titans Go levels of stupid. Are you really willing to go that far down to scrap at the bottom of the barrel? Also, I know this is pretty irrelevant to everything else that's going on, but apparently they're still playing up Spike's crush on Rarity. Seriously, are they really still doing this? It was funny at first, but now it's just pretentious. It literally got old 2 seasons ago, and even Spike has come to understand that his crush on Rarity isn't gonna go anywhere, so why still take it seriously? I guess the artists are nice one-shot characters, and I could appreciate that the series is utilizing past characters for new story ideas, but nothing, and I mean nothing, can save this episode for how stupid Applejack acted, how stupid Rarity's choices are, and how poorly this does commentary on different opinions. I don't know what to tell you, folks. Honest Apple is bad. It's really, really, really bad. I have not been so dumbfounded by an episode since the cutie remark, and on top of that, it has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. I still like Applejack, but by God, did this episode not serve her any justice. This could honestly be not just the worst episode of the season, but one of the worst in the entire show. If by some chance you haven't seen this episode yet, don't. Trust me, you'd just be wasting your time like I did. MisAnthro Pony over and out.